In this video, we are going to talk about errors in hypothesis testing. So there are two main types of errors. The type 1 error is an error in which you reject the null hypothesis, but it is actually true. So if you reject the null hypothesis, you are accepting the alternative as true, but instead the null is true. A type 2 error is an error in which you do not reject the null hypothesis, but actually the alternative hypothesis is true. So these are easiest to understand through examples. So let's look at the court example. So in a U.S. court, a defendant is either innocent, that's the null hypothesis, or guilty, that's the alternative hypothesis. A type 1 error is an error where you reject the null hypothesis, so you're rejecting that they are innocent and finding the defendant guilty, but they are actually innocent. So a type 1 error is an innocent defendant who is found guilty. A type 2 error is an error where you do not reject the null hypothesis, but the alternative hypothesis is true. So a type 2 error is a guilty defendant who did not have the null hypothesis rejected. Now, one thing to notice is that you can decrease the number of type 1 errors by increasing the level of proof required by the court. Of course, if you increase the level of proof required by the court, that will have the effect of increasing the number of type 2 errors. Okay, let's go back to our sleep examples. So the first sleep example, we had the null hypothesis was that the students averaged 7 hours of sleep per night. And the alternative hypothesis was that the students averaged more than 7 hours of sleep per night. So type 1 error is an error where you reject the null hypothesis, but it is actually true. So here we accept that the students average more than 7 hours of sleep per night, but they actually only average 7. A type 2 error is an error where you do not reject the null hypothesis, but you should have. So a type 2 error here is that we accept the students average only 7 hours of sleep per night, but they actually average more.